very excited today to welcome Christa Tomlinson to the podcast. Christa loves to create stories that are emotional and lovely, and she also believes love is love and everyone deserves to have their story told. Her most recent release is Cuffs, Collars, and Love, which is Logan and Clay's story. It's a box set that brings together Logan and Clay's epic romance in one collection. Christa, welcome. It's so great to have you here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So before we get to anything around books, we got to delve a little bit into your history because it turns out you were a roller derby girl.
Yes.
What was happening with that? How did you get into it? And was it as fun as it often looks like it is from as a spectator point of view?
I got into playing roller derby because I'm originally from St. Louis and I moved to Houston, and at the time I was here by myself and I didn't really know anybody yet. So I was looking for a way to make friends, and I had watched roller derby as a kid because it came on late at night on Saturdays or something, and so I knew what it was. And like in around 2008 or so, it kind of started making a comeback because of the movie Whip It. And so when I saw that it was out there, I was like, oh well, that'd be a way to make friends. Like all those people are right there, and I love sports and skating. So that's how I got involved. I played for about 5 years with Houston Roller Derby, a pretty big league here in the city, and it was a lot of fun. It's a full contact sport. We get a chance to get out there and just get physical, but also you've got your teammates and you're having fun, and it's the whole punk rock thing because everything was DIY, and it was a lot of fun. I miss it.
That's cool that it was so much fun. It looks fun, but also like one of those things you would just get like potentially pummeled.
Yeah, you do. I had 2 major injuries from it, which was kind of a drag. But I think that the fact that it was full contact and we were doing it because we wanted to, like we took so much pride in the bruises and oh my God, look at this bruise I got from when you hit me on my hip and that kind of thing. And it was just like that kind of stuff is we enjoyed that. Just seeing that we were able to be so physical and tough that you didn't mind it.
I just have to point out to Will that, the bruise thing's important. I used to play hockey for a number of years.
Awesome.
He never appreciated my bruises, but they mean something. They're a badge.
Yeah.
Do we get a roller derby book sometime?
I had kind of considered writing one for a long time, and I might still go back to it because, I think it would be a perfect way, kind of along the same way as my other series, just to have so much drama and, characters and just outlandish stuff going on because that's what roller derby is. So I might actually have to write one day.
On the future list.
Right, exactly. With the other 40 stories I have planned.
So tell us, let's get to the heart of the matter with the books. Tell us about the Logan and Clay collection that just came out.
So that was a box set that just kind of brought together the 3 books from Logan and Clay's specific books in the Cuffs, Collars, and Love series. So there's the Sergeant, a Christmas novella, and then an officer's submission. So I just put all those 3 books together so that readers who really like that particular couple from the series can just have it all together. So
that's very cool. And of course, the Sergeant, the first book from 2014, was a hit for you. That was 7 weeks at the top of the Amazon Gay and Lesbian Erotica
list. I know. I had no idea what I was doing at the time, so for that to happen was just pure luck and just very exciting at the time. So
tell us about these books. Like, who are Logan and Clay, and what was the inspiration for those?
Well, this kind of leads into my other series, but it actually started as a wrestling fan fiction because I was playing roller derby at the time, and I had broken my leg, so I was stuck on the couch all summer, and I've always been a wrestling fan, and that was the first year that I really, in 2012 when I started writing it, was the first year I started getting into the whole shipping thing, and I was a big John Cena and CM Punk fangirl. So I was writing fan fiction about it, and it kind of blew up on fanfiction.net and kind of went to a place that I wasn't expecting. I just didn't realize that was going to happen. And I had gotten away from writing. I had published a novella before, but playing roller derby and teaching full-time, I didn't have any time to write. So this kind of got me back into it, and the popularity of it gave me the confidence to, start writing again. And so once I finished it, I rewrote it as the Sergeant, had to come up with a whole new plot outline and characters and all that and everything, which was a lot of work. So once I did that, I went ahead and published it as a sergeant, and it took off, kind of the same way that the original version did. So that made me really happy. But it's a series about a police sergeant, and a officer. They're on a SWAT team, and the sergeant is he's a dom. And he's kind of had this thing for one of his officers for a really long time. And they kind of, over the course of the book, kind of get closer and closer, and they get into their relationship. And, there's a lot of drama and angst because, again, it was fan fiction. So that's kind of the whole trope thing behind it. So that's where that came from. They remain my favorite couple that I've written so far, just because I got so in depth with them. And so I was just really happy to, see that take off the way that it did.
Now, you hinted at that you'd been writing before you kind of dove deep into the fan fiction. Have you always written?
Yeah, I've written probably since middle school. Was my first attempt at a romance novel. It was this crazy, thing that was like there was a wagon train involved or something. It was when I was reading my historicals.
Okay.
Most ridiculous 11-year-old plot ever. But, I had kind of gotten away from it, once I, graduated from college, because you've got to have a job and make money and that kind of thing. And so I kind of got away from it. And I wrote my novella, Martini Seduction, which I published with Siren Publishing. But then again, work got in the way. But yeah, I've always wanted to be a romance writer for as long as I could remember. I just wasn't sure how to make it happen, until, the internet. And I was like, oh, here's some publishing houses that I can go to, and this is what they're looking for. And that's kind of how I, got into it.
That's very cool that you had it, then you came back to it. And there was that fanfic in the middle, which is so much, we hear over and over again that, that fanfic is kind of the bridge.
Right,
there.
yeah.
And it sounds like the fanfic kind of led you towards Champions of Desire, too, because you mentioned your wrestling fanfic.
Right, yeah.
What is it about wrestling that has you so into fandom and now the books?
I was a kid. My dad is a big wrestling fan, and he used to take us down to the Chase and down to the Kill to watch wrestling all the time when I was little. And so I just I've always watched it. And then as I got older, as a kid, I didn't notice it, but as I got older, I was like, this is so it's two dudes and they're oiled and naked rolling on top of each other. What is happening? Why does no one see? Why does no one see that this is, just begging to have some, ships and romance novels written about it? So that's, how I got involved with writing that.
How big is the shipping in wrestling?
It's pretty huge. It's if you were to look on somewhere like fanfiction.net, you would see that it's probably one of the biggest fandoms on there. Just because there's so many different wrestling promotions and things like that for people to get involved in. So it's pretty popular, but then again, not in a mainstream type way. It's like once you get involved in it, then you're like, oh my God, this is huge. But if you're not already involved, then you're probably not going to be as aware of it. But yeah, it's just the fact that, I think for people who are watching who don't get to see the romance storylines in wrestling, because the ones that are normally there are either a joke or they end badly, it's just a chance for us to kind of bring that into it and kind of see the things that we wish that we could see. So that's, I think, where that comes from.
Mm-hmm. Now, Champions of Desire, the second book in that series, In His Corner, came out in April. What do readers get to find inside that book?
So for that one, that's Trey and Brandon, which are they're a tag team in in Frontier Professional Wrestling. But at the time of this, where the series starts, we've got sort of like a mutual pining thing going on, because as we saw in the first book, Trey has a thing for Brandon, but doesn't think Brandon is, is interested at all. Brandon has a thing for Trey, but he's got his own insecurities, and that kind of makes him a little bit nervous to kind of even really, go there and attempt it. And so rather than try to do so, he's like, okay, I've been hinting around. He's not catching my hint, so I'm just going to leave because I would rather be away from here instead of, standing here with my heart pounding, looking at him every day. So he goes and he leaves, and it turns out badly for both of them because they are better together. And so he has to, realize that and come back and be together with his partner and his friend again. And then they have to build their relationship from there and just determine how that's going to work for them as a couple. And it's probably, and of course all of the wrestling stuff is tied into it, where they have things that are on the storyline side of the wrestling that are playing into the relationship and kind of, working that together so that they follow the same story. So I had a lot of fun writing it.
Excellent. And over time, I'm guessing that you've figured out how to strike the balance between the day job world and finding the time to write.
Yeah, it's difficult sometimes because I prefer to get up really early in the morning. I get up around 4:30 and write just because it's easier for me to get it done before I've done anything else in the day. And when it's still quiet, even though I live by myself, it feels quieter, at 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning than it does. And so then once I've kind of gotten all the writing out, then I can go do day job stuff. And it's good to, get out of the house and see people, instead of just being cooped up by myself all the time. And then, by the time, it's time to go home, then I'm ready to start writing again. So it kind of works.
Christa, I'm curious, when it comes to sports romance, how do you delve into the intricacies of the sport itself so that it's appealing for fans, specifically of wrestling, but is also appealing to someone who doesn't know anything at all about the sport, which is me. I read the first book in this series and I loved it to pieces, but I know literally nothing about wrestling. So how do you walk that line between basically two different kinds of readers?
I'm constantly aware of that when I'm writing that series. I try to keep it as basic as possible so that people who don't know wrestling can understand what I'm talking about and kind of get it, but also want to make sure that it's visual enough that you can picture it. So like when I'm writing one of the scenes where they're in the ring, I mean, in my brain, I've seen, I don't even know how many wrestling matches, and I know all these moves and everything, but I don't want to throw all that out there because like for a reader, they're like, what is this crap? And they're just, they're just going to go past it. Whereas people who are wrestling fans, they don't want to, I don't want to write it in a way that's incorrect because then they're like, oh, that's not right. I thought she was a wrestling fan. She doesn't know what she's doing. So I just try to pull the basic stuff. That's why I think I mentioned suplexes mentioned in there like 10,000 times because most people know what a suplex is. So I just try to write it as basic as possible, but also accurate so that the people who don't know wrestling can picture it. And then also the people who, do know wrestling, know that I know what I'm talking about and they're not going to, get all weird, and, nerdy about it. And then just also try to tie the emotion to it always. So I think, especially with Trey and Brandon's story, each wrestling scene always meant something. It wasn't just, okay, let's have another wrestling scene. It's, it's tied to something. So for example, when Trey is having his match, when he gets booed in his hometown, it's because I want to show that he's struggling, on his own. It's not just there just to be there. So that hopefully the person who's reading it, who's not a wrestling fan, even if they don't quite understand each move I'm talking about, they understand the emotion that's behind it. So that was the goal anyway.
Well, I think you did an excellent job. And you even included a terminology key at the beginning of the book.
Oh, nice.
which is very helpful. I didn't need it. I was able to keep up with everything, but it's very nice that you included that.
Thank you. I thought it would be helpful. Just, a lot of times people don't even read those. It's like, oh, they just go through and figure it out from context. But I thought just in case somebody wanted to see it, they would, just like as a safety net, know it was there. So they wouldn't have to be nervous if they wouldn't understand what I was talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, Will mentioned in his review that Champions of Desire might be the best series title ever. Is there an origin to that, or is that one of those things that just kind of snapped into your head when you were thinking about the series?
I can't take any credit for that series title at all. My friend came up with it. I was sitting there. I'm really bad at naming stuff. I don't think I've named any. I think I named one or maybe two of my books. I think most my niece Tanyetta and my friend Amanda name all my stuff for me. So I was sitting there trying to think of a series name, just like what, I was throwing stuff out there. I had like this whole list of names I was trying to come up with. My friend Amanda, who's also a wrestling fan, she was like, "What about Champions of Desire?" And I was like, "Oh, I really like that. Like that makes sense. They're champions, and then it's desire for the sexy, and just like, let's put those together." And so I really liked it. It just stuck from there. So that's where it came from.
Yeah, kudos to her.
I will tell her so.
Now, in April, you wrote a blog post that we referenced on the show about the lack of diversity in gay romance, and really called on everyone, the readers, the writers, the bloggers, everyone to stand up and kind of take a stand on that. What was the reaction to that post now that we're a couple months out from that?
For the most part, it was really positive. I had a lot of people sharing the post. Everyone who, either commented directly to me or on my Facebook, the comments, or on Twitter, they were mostly, I think there was one person who had something negative to say, and I just, but everybody else was really positive about it, and just was kind of like, oh, I didn't even realize, I didn't think about that. And it makes sense, because if something has always been one way, unless someone points it out to you, you don't know. And so you don't have a way to realize that there could be different ways of doing things. And so I hope that from that blog post, people were like, "Oh, wait, this is there is a lack of diversity. So maybe I should go and put in diversity when I'm going on Amazon.com, or check out some of these blogs and just kind of see what I can find." So that was the goal. Like, it wasn't. That's why I said, here's some action items for you. That was the whole point, was to give you something to do instead of just, let's not complain about it. I'm not bashing anybody. If you didn't know, you didn't know. But now here's some things you can do to make that better. So that was the whole point for me anyway.
Yeah, I think this past spring, a lot of difficult things happened within our specific subgenre. A lot of things like the Riptide situation and the stats about the Rita Awards. It all kind of came out all at once, and it really kind of sucked. But what I think you managed to do in your post, you were able to be very straightforward but very heartfelt. And I think what you put into words what I had been thinking and feeling, but had been unable to really kind of vocalize. So I thank you for doing that. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad you got something from it. That was, I really wanted to. I didn't want anyone to feel attacked. I just wanted to just kind of share, things that we could do to, like I said, make the subgenre better. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's why it came from, it read so well and had such good power, because it came from that place of really, wanting to put that into action for some people.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the most heartbreaking and really disturbing things that you put in that post was this quote: "I'm a black woman, and even I had thoughts that the books by and about black people weren't of good quality, because that's what you were taught, mostly indirectly by publishing." And I really found that crushing, that the books where you see yourself as a person are you're immediately like, well, those aren't as good. And you say you had to unlearn that. What guidance can you offer so that kind of everyone can unlearn that behavior of what they might have been taught, subconsciously over the years and decades?
I think for me, what I had to realize was that it was okay to see, my culture reflected in a book. Because when you're reading romance, when you're reading literature, that we read in high school, you get one style, you get one viewpoint, you get one culture presented to you over and over and over again. And so when you see something different, you're like, what is this? This isn't the same thing I was expecting. I felt like what I expected to see in a romance featuring black people was black people fit into a white culture. So they would be the exact same thing. They were just black, when I read a romance. And so when I read them and they weren't like that, when it was actually more like what I actually see in my own life, I was like, this is this isn't the, rich dukes in the castle that I'm used to reading about. What is this, And so it just seemed like it wasn't of quality when that's not what's true. It's just the fact that it's just different. So I had to change my mindset to go into it not having expectations of a certain type of thing. So I think when people are starting to read more diversely, they need to expect or not have an expectation that's going to be exactly like what they're used to, because it is going to be different. So you have to accept that, okay, I'm going to read this. It's different. That doesn't mean it's bad. That doesn't mean, and I hate to even use this word, that doesn't mean it's ghetto. That just means that it's a different style. That's all it is, and it's a different culture that you can kind of learn and appreciate. And so I think just knowing that ahead of time is very helpful and important, so that you're not, you see something different and you have an immediate negative, association with it. You've got to put that aside, and it might take a few books before you get there and kind of realize, like, oh, hey, it's okay that they are having different, customs on Thanksgiving Day, or that they have a different way of expressing emotion, or a different way of, just celebrating being happy, or different, terms that are just used. It's different, not bad, just different, I think.
Mm-hmm. Did that affect you when you started writing, or had you already unlearned this before you got going with the writing?
No, that's something that I'm actually still trying to unlearn, I think. Mm-hmm. I think for me, since I grew up reading just the same thing everyone else reads, that was the style that I brought to the table. And so when I am trying to make sure that I'm maybe bringing more Black culture into a book, I always stop and think, is this too much? Or or is this, is this going to make sense to the reader? Or are they going to look at this and think this is just weird and not want to be bothered with it? And then just kind of accepting to myself that it's okay. Like, for example, in Trey and Brandon's story, there's a scene where, he's messing with Brandon's hair. He's got naturally curly hair, and I wrote about how he would style it for him, and that's something that, unless you've got that type of hair, you've never experienced before and don't know the just pain in the butt part of it. So just having to realize that it's okay to mention that. It's okay for people to read about it, and it's okay to just kind of just talk about it just like you would anything else. So I definitely did have to, and I'm still working on unlearning just expecting it to be exactly like every other type of book out there. So,
what authors and books are inspiring to you?
I think at this point, and I can't even say that I have any modern authors that are inspiring me, is because I've still got the same type of books in my head, So for me, I think the books that I was reading, like the Johanna Lindsay's and Virginia Henley, that's all still in here. I'm still trying to get to the point where I'm bringing, more different types of, books and authors in. So I haven't really gotten to a point where I've kind of, I guess, folded over into a new style of writing or something, because I still have that, those old school romances just, still in there kicking around.
It's understandable. Now, you've brought our listeners kind of a cool package of prize, I think. What are you offering up? And you can't have this.
Wait, what?
So I just wanted to put together just a little Champions of Desire prize pack. So just, the first and second book that are currently out, and I've got just some, buttons and, the little cover art, postcards, and things like that. So just kind of a little prize pack so readers can kind of have the book in their hands and have a signed copy and just enjoy the whole package if they would like to.
Awesome. Well, we'll do a raffle copter for our listeners, and they'll find that on the show notes page for this week, and it'll run through the entire week. And that's very cool. Thank you for offering that.
No problem.
What's coming up next for you?
Well, right now I'm starting to move into some sci-fi type romance. So I'm writing a I'm starting a new series. I'm putting up a book that's going to blog it first, just to kind of ease my way into this kind of the subgenre shift and kind of give readers a chance to see what I'm doing, and a chance for me to kind of work on that, because I've only been writing contemporary to this point. So I'm writing I'm almost finished. I'm going to start posting it hopefully this Sunday, if not next Sunday. It's a series basically where humans have evolved, and they've kind of joined with another race, and they're it's basically because I've become over the past couple years a big anime nerd. And I really like the mechas, and I love Voltron and Gundam Wing and that type of stuff. So it's basically, if you were to just combine all that and put some romance with it, that's what I'm writing.
Wow. Congratulations. It scares me to think about writing something like sci-fi or paranormal because of just all the extra rules. Like, I understand contemporary life fairly well, I think, but to go in and all that world building and everything, do you have other genres you want to Yeah. Do you have other genres you want to go off and pursue in all of your book ideas?
I also want to write some fantasy stuff, so like historical fantasy type things, because that's what history was always my main thing. So I went to school I have a degree in history, and so just and I like fantasy and that type of thing. So I'm hoping to within the next couple years to write some historical fantasy type books as well. So we'll see how that goes.
That's very cool. Now, where can people keep up with you online so they can go read the series as you do it, but also stay in touch?
The best place to start is my website, ChristaTomlinson.com. That's where you'll find pretty much everything else. But I'm on Facebook as Christa Tomlinson. I'm on Instagram as Christa Tomlinson. My Twitter handle is kind of a mishmash of my derby name. It's ShockZ314. But if you just type in Christa Tomlinson on Twitter, it'll come up. So basically, just ChristaTomlinson.com, and then all of the social media stuff, just put my name in, and they can find me.
Very cool. Well, Christa, thank you so much for hanging out with us for a few minutes. We very much appreciate it. It's been a blast talking to you.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.